Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today I wanted to talk about some things I've observed from the LA fires, these terrible events, the destructions of so many homes, and it's extremely sad. And my heart goes out to those who have suffered. But I also want to make a comparison that I've noticed between the response to the fires and what happened in Ayn Rand's uh, book Atlas Shrugged, because I think Ayn Rand does a great job of putting forward the notions that have led us to a terrible response to these fires. So first, I want to give some background about Atlas Shrugged and sort of the story behind it. So um, to make the comparison more obvious for people. Now, first, one of the main themes of Atlas Shrugged was the prioritization of social causes over providing quality services. So basically, even though they had these people that were doing quality work, whether it be as a doctor, lawyers, I don't know, railroad engineers, really it wasn't valued too much whether they're good at it, as long as they were, if they weren't prioritizing people, and not people, but like social causes that they were saying would make society better off. So these prioritizations were pursued by politicians, businessmen, and professors who pursued the supposed egalitarian society that would not leave anyone behind. It's very much sort of the George Bush leave no child left behind act that came into pass, sort of the same mentality, more or less. The complaints of the day were aimed at the successful and how their success was impeding the success of others. So, of course, as we know, if a person is a millionaire, you know, the idea was that, oh, they're impeding them from impeding somebody else who wasn't as advantaged, from becoming a millionaire. So they needed to support those who were not as successful, which it wasn't like, oh, support impoverished people, but support those who are just worse off as businessmen. So you don't want to capitalize on your success at the expense of a poorly run competitor. And this is sort of shown between uh, Hank Reardon, who creates a new steel or a new metal. He calls it Reardon metal. Between and this competitor of his named Orrin Boyle, who is unsuccessful. He fails at providing people with the the products that they are asking for, the steel in a timely manner. So Reardon is able to um, fill those needs, and he makes more money because of that. One key act that personifies this, or sort of another key act that personifies this, was Jim Taggart, CEO of Taggart Transcontinental. He built a railroad that could not be sustained from the economics which the railroad was between Texas and Mexico. The reason for its unprofitability in this venture was the socialist government of Mexico, which would eventually nationalize the rail that was built. So basically, there wasn't enough profit coming back from it because the government was basically had taken over all the other industries and had left this Taggart Transcontinental Railroad, which would be useful, but of course people couldn't use it properly. There wasn't enough. People didn't have the money to pay, or there wasn't enough economic reason or business to continue. Um, while secondarily, it's later revealed that the venture was also sabotaged by a business owner who sought to draw investors into um, a faulty mining operation. Taggart and his friends, government, lobbyists, unsuccessful business owners, and bureaucrats, at the end of the day, still sought their own wealth, but on the outside purported to be social activists. They said that they wanted to help the people of Mexico, but at the end of the day, they really just wanted to be successful themselves. And I think the comparison between this and the California, or the response to the California fires, is, or if not obvious already, will become obvious soon enough. Over the course of the novel, society began to grind to a halt as incompetent men take over the roles of successful workers that went on strike. They continue to blame quality workers for the failures, as they are unwilling to accept responsibility for the problems that they themselves caused. They are willing to sacrifice the lives of the average citizens to continue to provide, or to continue to provide support to their buddies. This is most keenly shown when the government was on paper supposed to allow for the railroad to provide transportation of the harvest to be transported to the East Coast to provide necessary food to prevent starvation. But instead, they moved the materials in order to support a new to so they moved the materials to another company or another buddy of theirs in order to support a new crop that crony had advertised as a new and socially better food source. And in this case, it was soybeans. But they did not have enough soybeans in order to feed the populace. But because it was a social benefit, basically, because it was supposedly good for society, which really meant it was fashionable and good for the clique that had been um, forming this, or basically had formed the government. Uh, then the sacrifice of all these other people was worthwhile. And we'll get back to that. But first, a message from our sponsor. If you are looking for a way to express your Catholic faith through fashion, look no further than ProselyTies. ProselyTies is a Catholic owned tie company that sells beautiful and well made ties. ProselyTies is offering Plotlines listeners 10% off if you use the code Plotlines. That's PLOTLINES. Plotlines. Use the link in the description to get your next tie. Now back to the show. Yes. Um, I put forward this information because I do think this comparison is worthwhile. Um, because the officials in California are very similar to the fictional officials of Atlas Shrugged. Our society has its own fashionable social cause. If you're not living under a rock, that is most likely the only way that you would not know that diversity is that cause. Diversity is the excuse that the elites have been using in order to shift money from various groups to quote unquote less fortunate groups, or really just to big corporations that they want to prop up, that their buddies control, or that they're funded by. This is why, for diversity purposes, they must gayify every level of society. It doesn't matter the standards that they want to uphold, or that they should uphold. It doesn't matter the physical necessary. It matters the socially. The standout example of this surrounding the fires in California is the fire department's leadership being composed of amazingly lesbians. I've never heard that lesbians are better at, you know, putting out fires or being firefighters, or they're very, like, stronger than everybody. I would have expected it to be men, of course, big burly men. The fire department even has diversity director, because, as we all know, it really matters what the person looks like when they're going to save you from a burning building. this is actually the exact point that the assistant chief put forward as the reason for the diversity nature, the necessity for diversity in the LA Fire Department, that people feel comfortable getting saved by those who look like them. Of course, it doesn't make any sense given the fact that you're not going to be, how are you predicting that that means that, okay, now we need in, infinity lesbians as firefighters? Of course, that's not really, that wouldn't be what you need, even if you wanted to make people feel comfortable. That's not what you need, but of course that's what you provide, because what they see is an opportunity to get people like them uh, uh, in uh, in a position of power and making a lot of money. Of course, these firefighting positions, these leadership positions, are well paid. Of course, I didn't realize that it was important to have fat lesbians save you instead of a burly man, which I would have put forward as the most reasonable and likely firefighter. This, along with many examples of incompetence, such as not having water in the fire hydrants so first responders could put out the fires as quickly as possible, um, has brought about sort of this comparison. It's just like Atlas Shrugged. The leaders had no interest in taking responsibility for their failures. They aren't their purpose is focusing on these social issues. Just as as houses burned, the mayor of Los Angeles was in Ghana for inauguration of their new president. She, of course, knew that there was a strong possibility that there would be fires, but it was necessary for her to go to this inauguration for the good of society as a whole, also known as her own ego, or whatever would give her most success. One of the I have on the screen a the sort of what the a clip, or a actually no, like a meme that came out of the fires, and it's basically the assistant chief uh, of the LA Fire Department. Basically, she's saying that in response to a question about if a man is stuck in a burning building and she comes across him, uh, what's going to happen if she can't lift him because she's not strong enough for this big man? And basically, her response was that he got himself into the wrong place. Basically, he put himself into this fire. He should have known better not to be there and in need of help. So, classic victim blaming, I guess. Um, but while I reject many of the philosophical claims that Ayn Rand makes in Atlas Shrugged, I am impressed, however, by how she portrays the maniacal, self-obsessed leaders of society that are sprung from leftist politics. And I think this is quite obvious by the incompetence of California. California is the most leftist, liberal state in the union, and they are incapable of cleaning up their forests. They are incapable of preparing for a dangerous situation like these wildfires, and they instead prioritize social issues and the destruction of society as a whole, which brings them power because it's considered fashionable. These causes are exactly analogous to the causes that are put forward in Atlas Shrugged. The only the difference is how far back it was written. It was written in like the 60s and maybe the 50s. It was more the sort of the arguments, though of course it's also based on sort of the Soviet Union and stuff like that. Sort of the starvation, the unwillingness to you know, provide food for a starving populace because of whatever social needs that they have, is, I believe, based on the famines in Ukraine that starved millions, and it was purposeful. So, I'm not saying that I support everything in Atlas Shrugged or anything. I actually disagree with many of the things that she puts forward, but it is amazing how she gets this specific aspect of how incompetent these leftist leaders are always. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and God bless. Bye.